This is RSBANDB Update, episode 594, recorded Thursday, November 17th, 2016. Bounty Hunter returns. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us, sitting in for RSBANDB Update, another episode of that enjoyable podcast from our fine establishment known as RuneScape Bits and Bytes. I have just been told by the management that I am not allowed to use a certain adjective that I had intended on using this week to describe RSBANDB Update, but of course that was Mr. Bistro enforcing that claim on me.
Hello.
Just you and me this week to discuss the various updates this week, but should be interesting, I think. I think we're definitely on the right path here, and
for sure.
Yeah. We settled on enjoyable and fun to listen to rather than some other word that shouldn't have been used, because it evoked a very strong feeling in Mr. Bistro. And I've also been told to tell you guys that regardless of what you're thinking about the PvP updates or any negative updates are in RS in general, that the sun will indeed rise tomorrow, and there will be another chance to log into RS and enjoy it in your own way that makes you feel better rather than having to deal with cutthroat combat in PvP.
What an intro.
It really is. So, Bounty Hunter returns. So, PvP, yeah. We got the first feeling of PvP back in September with the deathmatch event, which, I mean, it felt as though deathmatch really didn't serve all too much of a purpose, in my view. It effectively took the combat parts of minigames like Castle Wars and Soul Wars and, just allowed you a place to go and do that kind of PvP on your own. Another one, of course, is the fight pits. I don't know if anyone goes to the fight pits anymore, but it feels like there's definitely some overlap between deathmatch and fight pits, along with all those. So, I mean, that's kind of why I felt that deathmatch really didn't situate a good spot in the RS content dynamic, let's just say. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste any more time on that because Bounty Hunter.
Yeah, Bounty Hunter definitely is unique in that regard. And it's back. And it has rejuvenated Edgeville and the wilderness in a way that we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen, in a number of years on RS3. And for me, that is perhaps the most important indicator of success when we're going to be looking forward to what Bounty Hunter is capable of doing. So I'll just be brief here, then I'll let you have at the mechanics, but you basically need level 20 combat to get started, and there's two worlds that you log into. You'll be automatically teleported to Edgeville to start your PKing adventures. You can log into World 97 if you want to play Legacy, or World 106 if you want to play with the evolution of combat, and then you basically click Join Queue, you are assigned a target, and then the mayhem begins. So, yeah. Where would you like to begin?
Well, just a minor thing. When starting out right away, when you log into the world, it's best to join the queue pretty early, because otherwise you're going to have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
There is a 5-minute interval between targets.
Okay, that explains a lot of things then.
Mm-hmm. But I really enjoyed it. I have never seen Edgeville or the wilderness be as busy and full of combat in EOC than I did on the day of release, and I hope that this is something that sticks around for a long time to come, because Bounty Hunter not only kind of gets people back into the wilderness to do PvP, but also adds just a little bit of incentive. And I think that we'll probably get into this a little bit more when we talk about the rewards, but I think that the rewards shouldn't be the only reason you're doing this kind of content.
Yeah. And I can say for me, I, have never really had much of an interest in RSPVP, and I don't think that anything like that could potentially develop over time. But my personal reason for, in addition to, the whole community stakeholder argument of this podcast and ensuring that RS is healthy, but personally, I can't wait to see what this does to the prices of potions. And, supersets we used to sell for $10K each. Now we have the Super War Master potion that's effectively the same thing that you can purchase on the exchange, so that should be interesting to watch. And, there's a perfect good saying that I always go back to in times like this, and it's a Ferengi rule of acquisition from Star Trek, rule of acquisition number 34, and that is that war is good for business. So, obviously that's the take I'm taking from this update. But anyways, sorry to throw you off track again.
No, you're fine. The mechanics, going into it a little bit more in depth here, there's going to be a little window that kind of shows up. For me, it showed up in the top right corner of my screen, kind of by my map.
Yep.
And this has got a circle on it that's got like 4 pie slices, and that fills up over the course of the 5 minutes to show when you are more likely to get a target. And I found that you are more likely to get a target when you're like standing around in the wilderness versus when you were just in Edgeville.
And for me, I thought that the target likelihood, with the bullseye and everything, I thought, okay, this is where you're supposed to go to find your target. Which, it was certainly an interesting thing to do, because this, like the path I followed from Edgeville is I headed east, and then I went into the wilderness north of Iraq, and then I ran north a bit, then east all the way to the Black Knight's Fortress, and made my loop back to Edgeville, and it didn't find me a target until that was actually complete. So I had no idea that this wasn't pointing me somewhere. It looked like it was pointing me deep into the wilderness, but it didn't give me a target until the circle had filled. I don't know if you had the same experience.
I think that might just be the timer of the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think the timer starts at least. I could be completely wrong on this, but from my experience, I started to see it populate itself when I was in the wilderness.
Okay. Yeah, mine started populating when I was right near the wall on the other side of the wilderness. So it is wilderness perception based.
Okay. But yeah, so you'll get assigned a target, and that target name will appear in blue in your chat, and it will start blinking an arrow for you to go and hunt the player down, which I think is cool. I think it would also be cool if maybe there wasn't such a straightforward way to find someone. I think that would add a little bit to hunting, but might be just a little bit too difficult.
I agree with that statement, and I think that could certainly be an option. And if this certainly does become more popular, there's no reason they couldn't expand it out beyond the wilderness like we used to have with the original Bounty Hunter worlds. So definitely an option going forward, I think.
But yeah, so you'll hunt down your target. If you kill them, then you're going to get a certain amount of points, which can be used in the rewards shop, as well as some of the stuff that they've been carrying around, because it is PvP.
Yep.
Which is really great. And yeah, that's honestly all there is to it. I really like that. Though you're hunting someone down, there's still the danger of other people trying to come after you, because there's other people that are waiting on their 5 minute cooldowns as well.
Right.
If they feel like they can handle taking someone else out, why not? So. And
you will really, skull if you kill someone that's not your target, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that. One other thing that this raises in my mind for, just a question of checking out the mechanics and everything. So let's assume that you're in the wilderness waiting for your target, and, there's just a group of people who are, for example, just set out on killing people who aren't their targets, and it prevents you from ultimately finding your target and getting to them. What does that mean? Like, could that become a problem, you think?
I think it could become a problem, but I don't think it's going to be a noticeable issue. So far, I ran into a bunch of people when I was doing or trying to get my first kill, and I was just able to stand over in the area of the wilderness that I was at, waiting for my timer to charge up, and people honestly just came up and asked if I wanted to fight. I ran into a couple people that came after me, but it's the wilderness, and I expected that.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's how everyone should be looking at this, and I don't think that it would ever become dead content because of that.
All right. Then another question that I had specifically for you based on this, I don't know if you have done enough fights yet to experience the matchmaking system based on their rankings, but if so, how do you feel that that's working out for you?
I feel like to begin with, it's going to be kind of tough for everyone. And I was hearing that from a lot of YouTubers as well. They were getting paired with just complete opposites, almost. But I think over the course of time, especially for people that want to keep playing this, it's really going to put them in a bracket that is right around their skill level. And I think that's exactly what Bounty Hunter needs, and will make it fun. Sure, there'll be the risk of other PvP stuff going on in the wilderness, but at least the target you're being assigned is something you can feasibly handle.
Yeah.
So, but the original Bounty Hunter kind of did this in the same way. For those of you guys who remember that, you were in a volcano and there was 3 door types that you were able to go into based on your combat level. And it wasn't so much skill based, based off of like big giant table that you're able to get in and out of, but it was still a little bit more specific. Like, these certain people are fighting each other, and there's not going to be a seriously lopsided fight.
Yeah, and that's what they need to do to be successful with this. And we got to applaud Jagex for offering a good deal of transparency on how the ranking system is going to work. Now, granted, they didn't say exactly what all the coefficients are, but it works as follows. Basically, you have a rating assigned to you, and that rating fluctuates based on a development coefficient that also factors in your opponent rating. Basically, a percent change formula factoring in you and your opponent, that multiply it by the coefficient. And then this is used in 2 ways. The first one is for MMR, which is used to match you up with other players who you might want to fight with. And then your rating is basically how you're ranked, and it's used to describe what your currently perceived skill is based on the other skills, other players' skills around you. So, I think that this is ultimately where this update comes down to in terms of ensuring that people are getting the fair fights, and that keeps people interested, right? Because you don't want to be clobbering everyone all the time, and you don't want to be being clobbered all the time. You want to have the opportunity to move up. So, there's lots of good research out there on how these kind of systems work, whether it be from a game like StarCraft or League of Legends. Jagex is certainly open to drawing on inspiration from those. So I think it's good that we spent the extra time getting this system in place. So, I guess we'll just have to check back with you over time to see how this system's going. But overall, you'd say it's pretty well?
I'd say it's pretty well. I think it would have done really well with a reset ability. Kind of like in Hearthstone, at the end of every month is the end of every season, and you're starting from square one.
Okay, so seasons.
And based on how far you got, you're going to have a little bit of a boost going into the next one, so it's not completely lopsided with noobs.
They could do that. That would be good.
But there's still the chance that you're going to be paired up with someone that you're going to be able to take down.
Yeah, and they got leagues for this too. Imp League is 0 to 1500. Goblin League is 1501 to 1999. Ice Fiend is 2000 to 2999, and Pyre Fiend is 3000 plus. So
they don't have a dragon one?
No.
I thought they did.
No. That's all they say here in the design document. So it's also worth noting that the only difference between the MMR rank and the actual rating is just a different development coefficient. They say for the ELO system, this new coefficient allows it to be more volatile and helps players push towards where they should be. A player who has a lower rating than they should will have a high MMR and therefore be offered more matches versus harder opponents, allowing them to raise their rating faster. Same is true in the opposite direction. If a player has been boosted to a higher rating, then losing a few matches will lower their MMR, and they will be placed against a lower ranked opponents, which if they lose against them, they will drop their rating until they reach where they should be. And for anyone who's played StarCraft before or Overwatch, you guys know exactly how this feels. When someone boosts you up, you fall down right after that. So, all right. Anything else in the mechanics that we should talk about here?
Not really. I think just PvP in general kind of covers the rest of the mechanics for Bounty Hunter.
All right. There was an interesting thing here that says players fighting the same person over and over again. Like you said, you can go in the wilderness and fight anyone. Will lose the ability to gain rating from them for a time period.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then, of course...
It's like if you were to just keep fighting your friends.
Exactly, right?
In other games.
Yeah. And, I think that is something that could definitely be going on here, but I think that, the people who are out there trying to search for, cheap ways to increase their ratings will eventually find that, these systems are very hard to counteract, and if Jagex has done it right... just looking for cheap fights really won't help you increase your rating at all. So I just have a warning out there for that because in the first battle that I did, just to test the system and get a feeling of how it was, the person basically wanted a free kill. And, I mean, I did give them a bit of a run for their money, but I wasn't fully equipped to take them out right off the bat. So... And I think that's what we can talk about next is what should someone's equipment set be when they're going into this?
I guess it depends on how much money you're willing to risk, and
right, that's something we really ought to underscore here, is that this isn't going to be a cheap thing where you can just go in, do a few battles. You might lose your armor, so you need to be able to replace that.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of things that go into this. You have to factor in, like I said, if you're willing to risk X amount, if you're okay with going one item over your safety limit and having your prayer on, hoping that you don't dwindle your prayer down and lose an expensive item with the protect item. But for me, just going in at a first time, I was willing to go ahead and risk Gano sets.
And how much do those go for?
They go for, I believe, around 700 for the whole set.
No, that's not too bad.
I'm going to have to actually look that up. But just get searching and then I'll keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went with Ganodermic because it was a medium range. I wasn't really willing to risk
level
Sea
75,
Singers.
I think, right?
Yeah. I wasn't willing to risk Sea Singers or anything. And I couldn't really think of anything else that would have made a lot of sense. Um, the entire set, it looks like it's about 2 mil.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
that's easily recoverable today, I think, if you work
Yeah.
at it.
But for a staff, I mentioned this in my article. I was using a polypore staff, and I, looking back on it, regret doing so because you could go in there with a Nox staff or the dungeoneering one. I always forget what it's called.
Chaotic staff?
The chaotic staff. And not really risk losing it, and that's fine. You're going to want to go for more speedy items. I don't want to cover armor too much because it's really just what you're comfortable doing. I would say that armor is actually kind of the secondary thought. It's usually use some pretty good weapons that you're able to keep safe with your amount of items you're able to risk, and then armor on the side.
Right.
But as
Okay.
for weapons with magic, I would recommend using some of the better and faster weapons that you're able to. And I say faster because in a PvP environment, it's not so much about like hitting hard every once in a while. It's hitting constantly. And if you're really good, then you can hit constantly and switch to something that hits really hard. An idea of this, even back in the day, was using a God Sword and switching to D-Claws to do a D-Claw spec on someone and just completely knock them down. And for strategy, which I'll get to after the armor, but I feel like I'm jumbling because I want to talk about everything at once.
Let's just focus on the weapons first.
Yeah.
So we got the ranged or the mage weapons out of the way. So something
Yeah.
fast, like wands, for example, would be good. What kind of wand or staff would you say then?
I would say a Wand of Treachery or the Chaotic Staff. If you're able to afford a Nox staff, I definitely go for a Nox staff.
All right. So jumping on over to the ranged side.
Jumping over to the ranged side, I recommend dual-handing crossbows. They're pretty fast.
That would be
Otherwise,
the Armadillo crossbow, level 75, if you wanted a cheap option, I believe.
Yeah, there's also the chaotic crossbows. You're able to also use ascension crossbows. Those work pretty well.
Expensive.
Expensive, but great. um, the ascension crossbows can really just divvy out the damage like extremely fast, and I feel extremely comfortable with range almost as much as I do so using mage. But yeah, I would definitely say crossbows are the way to go for this. I wouldn't really pick a bow because they're not all of them are very fast. Yep. And the abilities that you're going to get from the dual wielding are going to be able to do more damage and even do some carryover damage, which is also really important in PvP.
Now, people might be wondering, why haven't we mentioned melee at all?
It's kind of the same thing when it comes down to dungeoneering. You're having to run to your target a bunch, and when you're doing melee, you need to be much more careful about stuns, freedom, your prayers, and that kind of stuff, because people are going to either mage you or range you. And it doesn't do you any good when someone is using ranged on you, they stun you, and then they backstep, so you have to run over to them again just so you can get some damage on them. It's a losing battle. But if, for the sake of people that still want to do melee, definitely recommend dual chaotic long swords, rapiers. Rapiers are probably better. Drygore maces in particular are pretty good.
I could see the case for melee where, you manage to get paired against a target that you can hit through, that the combat triangle allows you to. and then you just basically, in effect, try and kill them in one shot, I'd imagine, if you're doing melee. Because if you're doing melee, you don't want the battle to persist, would be my guess, because they can, easily just run away and get you from a distance either way. So
yeah, it's really important if you're doing melee, and I don't want to go too much into abilities at the second, but it's really important to do something like Stomp for a threshold. And it sounds like a waste of a threshold, but stunning for 3.6 seconds when you know their anticipate's down. Yeah, that's really important and can really go a long way. If their anticipate's down and they are still waiting on a freedom to recharge, you just have them there for that amount of time, which, yeah.
And to clear things up, Anticipate is the ability, the general ability that prevents you from being stunned, and Freedom is the ability that breaks a stun. So that's why those are very important. Yeah.
Also, for if you are going down the melee route, there's no way you cannot use Slaughter, because if people are going to be ranging you from a distance, if you can get Slaughter in when they move, they get 3 times the damage over 6 seconds. So that's a really important one.
All right. So where to next?
Next, I would just briefly cover inventory here. If you have overloads, extremes, supersets, you need these, and you want to use them before you fight. It's really important as soon as you hop into the wilderness and are assigned a person to go after, that you immediately just overload and let yourself sit on that, because that's for overloads in particular, your levels aren't going to go down for the time that you have the overloads going.
Right.
So you can just simply recharge them and use another super restore, be back up to where you need to be. Also, super restores. I don't use prayer pots much, or the super prayer potions. Prayer renewal, if you really wanted to, I don't think it's completely necessary.
You could just cook up one of those, high-end overload salves that include the prayer renewal part.
Yeah, you could do that. I think that might be a waste of a salve, though. I don't know if I'd really want to risk one of those in PvP. I would for bossing, but I don't know about PvP. Because those can get to be some pretty expensive potions to lose, and that's a lot of doses too. So, anyway, I would recommend sharks. Sharks are good. Rocktails are good. Rocktail soups are kind of overkill. If you're relying on needing rocktail soups in order to get your kill, then you need to work on how you're killing, because that
I'd imagine you want the kills to be done quick, right?
Yeah, you want to get the kills to be done quick. If you're eating a lot, you're in bad shape. You want the other person to be constantly eating because they're losing a tick to attack you and all that.
And that also sucks away their adrenaline.
Yeah, it does. Adrenaline pot, real important to have. Take one as soon as you are able to, every time. It can mean the difference if you're going to hit your threshold first. It's huge. So adrenaline potions are a must, I would say.
I love that all these potions are finally getting a use.
Mm-hmm.
Because, was there a use before this week for adrenaline potions?
I don't know. I guess it depends on the player. I know that some people would use adrenaline potions when they're training invention faster, because it would just help them get their kills faster because they'd be hitting thresholds sooner.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah, really good use for it then. But yeah, sharks, the rest of the inventory, I wouldn't worry about any teleport things. Wouldn't worry about scrimshaws, auras, possibly, if you feel so inclined. The battles are really quick, so over long periods of time, auras like I think it's Resonance, the recharging prayer one, it's kind of just meh. Not really that good here. But I think that pretty much covers everything when it comes to inventory and stuff. Prayers, I think this is really important. It really comes down to preference. If you want to use the standard prayer book or you want to use curses, I would say if you're new to PvP, definitely use standard. If you've been around it more, I would definitely go curses.
Why is that?
Because of the top ones, you got Torment, Anguish, and Turmoil, which are going to give you that extreme boost.
Right.
Which is really important because it's going to bring up your total amount of damage and possibly get closer to a one hit when someone's at 30 or 40%.
Oh, okay. All right.
Now,
what about equipment-wise? I mean, is it time to look at armor at this point that you'd be wearing in addition to the weapons? Or what's your thoughts on armor? Tank, power, hybrid?
It's Cook's choice. If there's an armor that's a power armor that you can afford to use, I would say go for it. Honestly, the only power armor I can think of that I would be even willing to risk is Barrows.
Barrows is tank armor, isn't it?
Barrows for set abilities.
Oh, right.
Like Darox. Right. That will be...
We got some fun stuff to talk about with that after.
But honestly, I really, it's really up to what you're able to afford.
Okay.
The weapons, I believe, are like the most important part.
Right.
And if you're able to put together some decent defense to good defense, then you should be okay.
Yeah, because I mean, we got to really factor in the combat triangle here with this incarnation of PvP. Because I mean, if you're going to be, fighting someone who has ranged armor, you definitely want melee. You don't want magic. Whereas if you're fighting someone who's in melee, you definitely want to use magic and not ranged. So, part of me makes myself think that hybrid armor might be the best option here. But then again, that's a really low defense.
Hybrid armor is not the way to go here. And
is it because of the low defense that it offers?
It's because you are sacrificing a strong defense or a strong attack for just mediocre everything.
Right, because it also has a damage penalty, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. If you're going to fight someone, you are either going to be in a really good situation where they're the opposite combat style and that benefits you, or you're going to be on the other side where you're kind of screwed. It is a triangle. I don't know how much it matters. I haven't done a ton of PvP kills, but from what I've found is when I'm getting ranged with mage armor, I'm getting completely wiped.
Yeah.
So
I think that was the intention of the modern combat triangle.
Yeah. So,
all right.
But I do not think hybrid armor is the way to go. So I wouldn't recommend that.
All right. Well, glad we got that out of the way because, and I mean, I knew going in that there was going to be the poor defense on hybrid armor. Also, that the fact you take a damage penalty for it. But everyone from the olden days will remember that the void armor, which of course was the first initial hybrid armor, was the gold standard of PvP armor. So I thought we needed to bring that out there and just highlight the fact that you definitely want to be class specific here today.
Yeah.
All right. What about amulets and other gear that might boost you?
One item that maybe it's not a good idea on my part that I thought was willing to take up one of my spots for safe slots. I even just went ahead and went over and allowed myself to risk it. My Arcane Stream Necklace, which is a dungeoneering reward, which boosts the possible or magic damage that you deal a great deal. So I'd say Arcane Stream, the Dungeoneering necklaces for range magic are really great. Amulet of Fury, I really don't know the price on that right now. I can actually go ahead and price check that. But
unless I saw they were cheap. Fury,
yeah.
1.8 million.
I would say probably could stick with the Glory if you really wanted to.
But that really, I mean, stat-wise, I don't know. I mean, at that point, I think you're really looking forward to just optimizing yourself at, a very small amount, because they do give like a teeny tiny boost to each of the classes, and that the Glory is 26, so I'm not sure, if that's something that people are going to be interested in. The Fury is 32 with 3 prayer bonus. Highest you can get is the Amulet of Souls at 46, but I don't think you would want to risk that, because that's the Hydrix jewelry. So,
yeah. But yeah, the Arcane Stream necklace, it's 44 magic boost. I love it.
All right.
Yeah. So it's
I guess
really
that's
good.
What you would go with.
Yeah. I always have really good luck when I'm asphyxiating and I have an Arcane Stream necklace on. So it's probably one of my favorite combos in the game.
All right. Neat. Anything else equipment-wise that we ought to mention?
Boots, if you are wearing a set and you need the set bonus and boots are included, boots for it. Just do it. I know that boots are ridiculously
they're often
expensive.
Overlooked.
They're often overlooked, but they're always overpriced.
Right. Because they complete sets.
Mm-hmm. They're like, if you're doing melee, just get yourself a good set of boots. If you're wearing bandos to go in there and try and use some power armor, definitely get bandos boots with it. Like, you need them. But if you're willing to skimp out on your boots, I would say hybrid boots aren't really that bad of an option.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could do that, but doesn't that also still impart a bit of a penalty on your damage if you put a piece of hybrid armor on you, if I recall?
It shouldn't be that significant.
Okay. All right. Fair enough then.
I mean, like, unless you're like super into combat and you're just optimizing everything to the best you can, then yeah, you would never pick that. But I assume that for pretty much everyone that's listening to the podcast, it wouldn't matter too much.
All right. I just got a couple questions before we move on to rewards for you, if that's all right. Now, what do you think of the idea of people potentially reviving the idea of peers when it comes to this kind of PvP?
All for it.
Artificially lowering combat to have a higher strength level but a lower defense level, which you can do with the original combat level back in play here. And I mean, you could very much so have a very powerful, I guess, magic peer at this point, given the fact that magic has a equal influence on combat as does attack and strength. So that would be a possibility, I guess. Then, following from that, so obviously you said it would work. Do you think that we will be talking about Bounty Hunter for long enough that people will ultimately decide that they want to make a custom-built peer account for this kind of combat?
Well, I think it goes to say that this idea might stick around long enough for people to make them, because I'm considering it.
Oh, wow. Okay. What kind are you considering?
I'm considering making a range peer.
All right. That could be very interesting. And one thing that you can do nowadays that you couldn't do is you can, of course, fund these accounts with bonds, transfer the bonds from your main account over to the other account, and you can have membership.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've never really considered making pretty much any more accounts other than my main.
Yeah, same here.
But now I could just see how much fun I would have trying a completely different play style with this.
All right. Then this leads me to my third and final question. This is obviously not available for free-to-play audiences at this time. You think that's something that should be looked at going forward?
Yes.
Because you had Bounty Hunter to free-to-play. You can, effectively start from combat level 20, as it says. So you start, free-to-play, and this is how you effectively would be building your character, and you would be fighting alongside people at that level. So I think that would be a very interesting experience. And, I can see why they want to make it a members-only feature to begin with. But I think that if it is successful on the membership side, it definitely needs to go free-to-play, because that will bring people to RS and enable them to, just see everything that we have to offer here.
Yeah, I think that it really should be with free-to-play. And another reason for that is, if you're not very good doing Bounty Hunter as a member, free-to-play is much simpler. Yep. Even if you're just trying Legacy on members, there's still just a ton of items you have to think about.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
Free-to-play really...
I assume you don't want to touch Legacy at all, because your article was centering on EOC.
No, I'm not a Legacy player, and if people want to hear about it, they'll have to go to someone else to hear about it, because I just have not exposed myself to it. I have enjoyed EOC too much, and I feel like if I spent time trying to figure out Legacy again, that it would just kind of take away from more things I could learn with EOC.
All right, that's fair. And I'm going to say this once and only once this episode. I think that, if we saw the increase of the game tick rate, a re-engineering of the game engine to allow for a faster tick rate, I think that would only improve Bounty Hunter, and it would, put it on par, as I mentioned, with the other MOBA combat systems out there, which, is something that RuneScape could really redefine itself as for 2017, I think, if they were ever going to do something like that, or even 2018, considering how large a job it would be. So, you see Bounty Hunter is going to be successful. You see people are playing it. Okay, let's improve the game engine to make it that much more responsive. And, it doesn't even, need to be, a full, 600 tick rate like modern games are. You could even, just double or triple.
But why not?
Yeah, you could. But
if you're going to do it, do it.
But you could, I'm saying you could double or triple the tick rate, and people playing RS would notice a huge difference who have already been there. So I think that this is a great opening to look at other projects on the engine side related to that, if this is at all successful, which, based on what I saw and the way you're talking about this, it certainly sounds like it will be. And I hope that it is, because this is something in RS that has been desperately needed over time. It goes back to what I was saying. You need a wilderness PvP part, which we now got. You need a fun PvP part, which we got with mini games and deathmatch and clan citadels. And then you need to find a way to tie this all together and train people to PvP. And it might be through, killing people who are of similar skill that does it.
And I want to make one more statement here. Earlier this year, when Duels was released,
right in June.
Yeah, bravo, Jagex. Perfect. If you want to practice this and be risk-free, just ask someone on your friends list and try it. And if you want to be a little bit more risky, go out with a friend and do Bounty Hunter together.
Yeah.
You'll have different targets, and you'll probably be going to different places, but you still got it each other's back, and it's good.
Yeah, and I mean, when it came out, the Dueling Anywhere update, it was clear at that point that the Duel Anywhere update was to provide the plumbing for the Falador Massacre commemoration event, which obviously has to go down as the worst update of 2016, but it did provide that framework where we can get used to doing PvP again. So it's now becoming apparent how that's going to be useful. And for me, for a certain period, I even forgot that was part of the game because I turned the option off in my interface to see the duels. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
There's an option on our interfaces where you can make it go away if you don't want any of that.
Mm.
So.
Well, I guess I'm glad it's there. I just hope it's not defaulted that way.
No, it's defaulted as on.
Okay, good.
Yep. All right, so rewards. Existing points from Deathmatch, 100 of them can now be used on the Bounty Hunter Teleport reward unlock, and this allows you to teleport near your target, so that's another good way of finding them. It'll also warn you about their wilderness level and if they're in multi-way combat before you teleport. I think this is great, because if you're looking, to just get a one-on-one duel and you're trying to find your target somewhere in the wilderness, and they're out and about, in a multi-way area, and you don't want to take that risk, well, you can wait till they move out from there and then take it to them after that.
Yeah. I never fought anyone in the multi-combat areas. I'm sure that would have been extremely nerve-wracking.
Yeah, because you don't know what's going to come at you, right?
Well, yeah. Like, you already kind of don't know what's going to come at you, and to also add in the fact that more than one person could beat the crap out of you is pretty intimidating.
Yep.
And awesome at the same time.
And that's exactly how it was in Star Trek Online PvP, the only PvP that I ever was experienced in. And it's kind of weird that I don't touch it at RS, but I was practically an expert in that game. But yeah, that's what it was all about there in the in the wilderness of Star Trek Online, so to speak. You got to watch out for all the cloaked things coming at you, and you don't know how many of them are going to hit you at once. And I think that if you brought something like that to RS, it'd be really great. So
yeah. I don't think I got a chance to cover abilities too much. I know I did.
No, you didn't.
Definitely
we can talk
Melee.
about those for a bit before we move on.
I'll try and go through them quickly, because I know we've been on this for a while.
They are all conveniently placed in an Informer article by you at informer.rsbnb.com.
Yeah, you can see the exact bars that I recommend trying out for starters. You can adjust them however you like, but this is what was working best for me and what I'm most comfortable with. I'll do melee first. I used some basics like Fury, Dismember.
Great movie, by the way.
Oh, okay. Sever, Slice, Decimate, Havoc, and then moving into some thresholds, Slaughter, Assault, and Stomp. And then what all of these bars have in common: Freedom, Anticipation, which is your defense against stuns. I was using Soul Split, and for melee, Turmoil. So that was my melee bar. And I know that I had Dismember in there twice, but that's because I love using Dismember. It hits 180% over 6 seconds, so one of my favorite basics.
Yeah, I remember when they buffed that. That was pretty substantial.
Mm-hmm. Moving into range, we have, once again, Freedom, Anticipate. You have Escape. This is really important after you use something like Binding Shot, which is a stunner. That way you're able to back off, especially if they're melee, and then just get some free damage per second on them. Anguish for Curse and Soul Split. I also have my Prayer tab normally open, sitting, so I can deflect whatever method they're using.
What about having multiple action bars up on the screen and assigning hotkeys to them?
You could do that.
Have you gone that way yet?
I haven't. There's a lot to it. because all of a sudden there is just so many more options, and
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah. You need one of those 12-button gaming mice, eh?
no, it would take too long to learn that. And honestly, that's also the reason I don't normally sit with multiple bars on. I have my action bar sitting in the corner of my screen, and right underneath that, I have my whole list of prayers and my inventory underneath even that. So it's what's comfortable for me. I don't really have to worry about the action bar so much. I've always just been able to just toggle them from the prayer menu and all that stuff. So, but that's the old schoolish kind of me. Because you always had that prayer window that you would activate your prayers on before.
Yeah.
So, anyway, range, I actually had an ultimate ability, Def Swiftness. That's just because if you
They
are
take
able to
damage
stun
if they're in
people-
the cloud.
Yeah, it's good. I would recommend this for an ultimate ability just in range. Snapshot, which is a threshold, rapid fire, all stuff to just get in like copious amounts of damage right away. There's the needle strike. There is piercing shot, fragmentation shot. This is another one of those abilities where if they move, they're going to suffer ×2 damage for those 6 seconds. There's tight bindings, which is your binding one as a threshold. And I had that sitting right next to my binding shot. So I had both of my stuns in one place. Moving on to Mage. Mage is probably the one I cared for the most because it was the one I used the most. Add Anticipation, Provoke. I had Regeneration
Why
sitting
provoke?
on there.
What does that do for PvP?
My Provoke must have just got moved on there. My
Okay,
bar's
fair
unlocked
enough.
right now. Obviously, Freedom. Used Chains. Then Deep Impact. This
Another
is the
good
one
movie.
that binds them. Yep. For 3.6 seconds, dealing 200%. That's a threshold. Impact. I had that one sitting right next to it. This also binds for 1.2 seconds. I have Rack. Deals 94% active damage, inflicts 188% against stunned or bound. So that was sitting next to my stuns. Makes me smile a little because I love doing that. Asphyxiate, sitting right next to that because I love doing that.
Because Asphyxiate does more damage when the target is stunned, am I right?
Yep. The difference with that one is that's a threshold, so
Right.
I have it sitting a little bit farther away because it's not always active.
Yeah.
There's Wild Magic, which is a threshold, which deals 50% to 115% of your active spell damage. Another reason why I was also using my Arcane Stream Necklace because that 215% gets bumped up like to the next level when you're using that kind of stuff. How range had Backstep, I have Surge, which moves you away from your target, allowing you to deal damage from them after you stun. Combust, this is that movement one once again after you if they start moving around. Really great. And then, of course, Dragon Breath and Torment and Soul Split. Yeah, that's what I got for those 3 styles.
Excellent. One thing we didn't really go over here, and I'm seeing it staring at me on the bar. Do you use Summoning Familiar?
Yeah, it's on the bar. I always have mine set to quick withdraw from, but I was not using any summoning familiars on day one because my rate of death was relatively high, and I couldn't really think of a familiar that I would really prefer to
Right.
go out with.
And of course you lose
And
the
going out with a
familiar
pack yak means you
pouch
use whatever
Yeah.
was sitting in the pack yak. So I don't know if PvP is the best place to walk around with copious amounts of food, especially if you're using something that's relatively high like rocktails.
All right. Well, I believe we can talk about the rewards now, which people are probably itching to hear about. So,
Yeah.
we already mentioned the teleport to find your target. It lets you know if you're in the multi-way combat or not, so that's good. A pair of random brawling gloves for 20,000 bounty hunter points you can pick up.
Large rune pouch.
Yeah,
holds
that's
up to
good.
60k of types of runes.
Excellent.
Really good.
Revenant pet unlock. It's just an override for the revenants that you find deep in the wilderness. So if you want that, that's a nice cosmetic. Ancient warrior gear upgrade patch. This is where it gets interesting. Upgrades a piece of the ancient warrior armor, which is initially tier 70s that you find in the 4 and 3 dungeon to tier 88. The patch is tradable, but the upgraded gear is not tradable. And, once again, tier 88 gear that you can get from the wilderness is pretty good for PvP. So, once again, this is the whole wilderness strategy coming into play here. And, I can see why you would want to use something like this. You imagine... You imagine pairing this with the Hellfire Bow?
Yeah.
Because remember, we discovered last week that the Hellfire Bow is a very fast bow. So there's your fast bow. You find it in the wilderness and go bounty hunting and off you go. So...
that would take a lot of specifics to actually run into that scenario, though.
It really is. It really is. So... All right. This, of course, is PvP armor, so you can take that for what it's worth. The Wilderness Hilt upgrades a Dragon Dagger, Claws, Longsword, Mace, or Scimitar to tier 70.
All right.
So, can you imagine having a tier 70 Dragon Longsword? That'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, it does degrade, though, which is good, which is very good.
And I assume all these can be used
reminds me of
outside
the
the
Corrupt
wilderness
Dragon
too,
stuff.
right?
Yeah. It reminds me of the Corrupt Dragon stuff for non-members.
That's
almost.
right. That's right. So, too bad that wasn't tier 80, because I would love there for be a reason to use the Dragon Longsword again, but it is what it is.
The Adrenaline Crystals, those are pretty good. I don't know if they're worth...
Super Adrenaline Potion, tradable item. It will also upgrade a replenishment potion if added directly.
Yeah, the boost is really good, but based on how many points you get per kill, the points are a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
I think.
And, I mean, I imagine these are going to be fairly high-priced when you... ultimately look at it. And it's also worth noting that the adrenaline potions are not tradable, so you're going to need to make those yourself, and they do require level 84 herb lore to make. So take that for what it's worth as well. Amulet of the Forsaken, 2,000 bounty hunter points after a tier 70 tradable item that when added gives the following buffs to the original 6 Barrows armor. And I think this is where things get really interesting for the rewards. Darroch scales from full health rather than half health. And of course, as you know, Darroch does more damage as you decrease in health. So, another reason to use Darroch. And I think it's clear that based on kind of what you were saying, looking back, that they are positioning tier 70 and about to be the tier that you would use if you're going for PvP. So, and you can just tell it right here with these Barrows upgrades. Torags give you an additional 2% adrenaline per spec on activation. Torags increases adrenaline on its own when you use it. Guthans increases the healing boost by 10%. Varak resets attack swing on activation. So I guess this is just a way to make you attack faster, if I'm reading that right.
It almost sounds like on activation it's an additional hit.
Okay, maybe then. that would work as well. Arms debuffs opponent's melee damage by 10% on activation, which is, of course, what you want if you're fighting as a mage against a melee person. Carl also debuffs the opponent's magic damage by 10% when fighting on activation. So there's that. And there's also weapons from the old Crucible, 30,000 Bounty Hunter.
Crucible?
Yeah, Crucible weapons.
Crucible?
It's not Crucible?
Crucible.
I think it's Crucible, but 30,000 points, upgrading them to tier 87 weapons with special attacks. And once again, this is kind of in line with the Wilderness 4 and 3 armor that we mentioned previously.
I'm glad that these are back in. I think that they're a little bit high on points, but
oh yeah,
I think they're worth it if they are tier 87. So.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine. And obviously, this is going to be very high tier for PvP.
Yeah.
Then, of course, a whole bunch of other changes that you can purchase with your deathmatch points. We did talk about this during the deathmatch episodes. The costs were a little bit too much, so the Wilderness XP Slayer Enhancers had its price cut by 67% down to 100 points from 300. The small rune pouch is now only 600, down from 1800. Ancient Teleport tablets unlocked 1200 now, 300 DM points. Revenant Drop Enhancer 1800 now, 200 DM points. I could just go on and on, but the entire list is right here that you can look at. So definitely reason out there to PvP aside from, just the whole PvP aspect, and I think you'll be rewarded nicely if you do go out there and PvP. So I apologize to the listeners of the podcast. This was PvP update, and we knew this was coming, but it had to be discussed because, quite frankly, we haven't had a PvP update in years that was worth talking about, and I think we finally had that this week. So for those of you guys out there who do PvP, I know you guys are all probably happy. And for those of you guys who don't, well, maybe it's a good chance to decide if you want to go out there and start learning.
Yeah, for those of you who don't, it's time to wake up. We're moving on.
That's right. That's right. We're moving on to the elite skilling outfits right now, which did come out this week for mining and rune crafting. So obviously, this has been a huge source of discussion in the past. The Rune Ethereal outfit and the Magic Golem outfit, initially only available on Treasure Hunter. We've gone through those outfits before, so I'm not going to go through the entire benefits here. But as specified in the design document, they are out now. You need 70 mining or runecrafting to begin collecting fragments, and 80 mining or 80 runecrafting to assemble the outfits, with 20 and 21 invention respectively for that. And 21 invention, that's really not too hard to get, so I don't think there's much to complain about right there. But I can say that having these added to game definitely does kind of crack the treasure hunter nuts, so to speak, that there's a little bit so much coming from Treasure Hunter that maybe we can finally get a few of these items in game without needing to spend too many keys or bonds on them. So
yeah, I hope they move more in that direction.
Oh yeah, they definitely
I'd be willing
should.
to put in I'd be willing to put in the time for it. And I think if you equate the amount of time someone puts into the game to the value of rune coins, you might find an equal level somewhere for membership cost. So
yeah, you need 3,600 fragments in order to, or I'm sorry, not 3,600. That's wrong. But anyways, at level 99, you get 100% more fragment drop. 120, level 120, 200% more, and at 200 mil, you get 300% more fragments drop, which in word speak means that players with 99 will get the output twice as fast, and players with 200 mil will get it 4 times as fast. It takes 3,600 fragments to make a single outfit piece, and 18,000 for a full outfit. And the average amount of time that it's come out to start getting these fragments to put together one of these outfits is a few hours. It's not a small amount, but it's not a huge amount. So it's definitely manageable if you're going for 99 rune crafting, for example.
Could you do it in a week?
You could do it in a week, I'd imagine, if you played a lot. But I think it's, I think it came out to around 3 hours or so for each piece of the outfit.
Okay.
So, I mean,
I'd say that's
it's not easy,
right
but it's not hard.
I think that's right where it should be.
Yeah, definitely. And once you have created a piece, you'll never be able to create the same piece, and fragments will no longer drop, and any remaining fragments will be destroyed once you have completed all the outfits in that set. So, nice way to keep your inventory clean once it's done, and you know when you're done because you got all the pieces for it. So, I don't think there's much else to say about this because we did talk about this extensively when the design document was unveiled, so I think we can leave it at that.
I think so too.
Yeah. All in all, definitely a good direction for Jagex to go on this.
For sure. I'm really happy with that. I think the time sounds well balanced and something that I would be willing to shoot for myself. So
definitely. All right. Not too much in the patch notes this week. A couple of things we can go through. Players can no longer remote bank all energy types, including cursed, via imp boxes or legendary pets. You know that this is targeting, eh? This is making people ensure that they're going to have lots of energy on them when they're out in the wilderness, gathering that cursed energy and making it an even more enticing target for PvPers. Which, I mean, if you're a skiller, you don't like this, and maybe that's a way of enticing more people to go PvPing in the wilderness. Not 100% sure on that. But
hey, more risk, more reward, both sides.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a roving banker to the north of the crater if you did ever want to go bank in a traditional manner. So it's not a huge problem. The banker's close to the farming patch up there. So
how far out is the energy?
It's somewhere in the level 20s wilderness, if I recall. I'm not sure where it is. It's where the old bounty hunter crater was.
Okay, if you really wanted to, you could probably just go south for like 10 or 15 seconds and Tokolzo to a bank quick.
Well, there you go. And then the Wilderness Sword takes you to the farming patch, and then you can just have a quick run south. So there's an option right there. Some messages that have incorrectly referenced the Crucible rather than Deathmatch have been fixed. And I can see that's why he said Crucible earlier, because the Crucible doesn't exist anymore, but Deathmatch does. So we got the Crucible weapons now. The Make X system now works correctly when using a rune pouch, and of course this is referring to the rune pouch that we talked about previously in the rewards from Deathmatch and Bounty Hunter to store runes in your inventory.
Which is much needed because if range can just store whatever the heck it wants, magic should be able to as well.
Yeah, definitely. Buying multiple XP lamps for a random skill from the Arc no longer awards a single lamp for the price of several. Okay.
Whoops.
Yep. And you know how hard those chimes are to come across. So, all right. Corrected an issue where a player had fully repaired the Lady Lumbridge during Dragon Slayer, but Ned didn't believe it was fully repaired enough.
One more sign that Ned is evil.
Yeah, I forget who it was had a crazy theory about Ned, and maybe he should have been assigned to do something else. So, anyways.
I don't know. I do remember you really wanted me to write something about Ned for the Halloween stuff.
When was this?
They were doing that Halloween 200-some characters short story.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I didn't remember that.
That's why I included it, because I saw Ned in there, and I'm like, oh, this has to go in. Uh-huh.
All right, fair enough. Anything else in the patch notes?
No. It's really short this week.
Okay. Well, then we can dive right into the next part of the mining and smithing development diaries, which was released this week. This one is, of course, focusing on profit, which is something that everyone is going to be interested in if they are at all concerned with training the skill, because everyone knows that a money sink skill is kind of left to the end. So this one started off with addressing some misconceptions from the last episode, which is good.
I didn't realize that there was so much pullback.
Yeah, neither did I. And
this.
I thought this was obvious because they explicitly wanted to clarify here that level 90 gear and above will not outright require PVM components. So the idea here was that, if you're going to be doing mining and smithing above level 90 plus, you're going to need to get something from PVM. And no, that is not the case. The only case here is that the gear that you make at level 90 plus, that is going to be rare gear and to, be first class gear that is capable of competing with PVM gear, will require those components. But standard gear that you create at level 90 and above will not require those components. So that's something that they really wanted to clarify here. And this completely skipped my mind in the last dev diary, because I didn't think this was the case. Did you?
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, all right. And the second impression is that PVM was still being prioritized over skilling, which, with the huge discussion on PVM and relating it to smithing, people thought that, this is, we're not going to ever see that that increase in the skilling side of things, which they did say is actually going to be happening. So that was misconception number 2 that they wanted to clarify with this. And once again, for some reason, I didn't pick that up. Did you?
No, I didn't pick that one up either.
All right. So then we move into discussing the question they left off with during the last episode, and that was, do you have any suggestions for an overload style item? And believe it or not, the overwhelming response from the player base on this was something like a whetstone that would be used for sword sharpening to increase the damage on your weapons. And of course, they said that magic and ranged would not be left out in the cold with this, though they are not going to be outright improving skills such as rune crafting or fletching or crafting with this. So we can save that for another day. But that's the kind of thing that we're looking at for the consumable item based on player feedback. What do you think?
I think that's a good idea. I think they were really struggling, and I was kind of even struggling with ideas of what they could honestly do for an overload component to smithing, but I think that might be a pretty good idea.
Yeah, definitely. All right. And then, it goes into a back and forth, and the question was asked, what did you think of the PVM incorporation into smithing? And generally, based on the feedback they were given from last episode, it was positive. And they wanted to be also made clear that it's not just armor that's going to be talked about. There will be weapons as well, and this is where the combat triangle being respected also comes in, that there will need to be something for magic and ranged as well. So be interesting to see how they approach that without going into realms of rune crafting and fletching. And then we get into the core of the matter on this week's episode, dealing with profit. And the problem with smithing is that right now, no one wants what it creates, aside from, a few specific items like we talked about in the past, the rune two-hander, for example. No one really wants anything aside from maybe a few invention components from some of the adamant and rune swords. So that's the problem they're trying to solve with this. And then that solving of this problem leads into another question, is that it becomes an issue of supply and demand. But there's something that many people don't realize, is that it's not only raw materials that are treated as supply, it's the amount of people who can create the item that are also the supply in this. So if you have a huge boatload of people with 90 plus smithing who are creating an item, that is increasing the supply of it and decreasing its perceived value. So that is something that they need to be aware of going forward with mining and smithing. So I think that, I don't know how people are going to feel about what they have come up with here. I don't know how you feel about it. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say, but the options that they are looking at include the following: an increase in skill level, i.e. the mastery tech trees, RNG, an increase in input cost, or lower XP gains, or a time sink. So,
do you want to explain what RNG is?
Yeah, RNG basically is a term that's thrown around for people online. It's, abbreviated random number generation. So it's just, how high of a chance are we going to have that I'm going to create this item successfully? The current thing that comes into mind with smithing is the Artisan's Workshop.
Yeah, and I think that's the route that they should take.
RNG?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Mastery would include an increased time cost for, creating these profitable items, and that's something that would start at level 99 smithing, for example, maybe a bit lower, and it distinguishes people who really care about 99 versus those who just get 99 for the max requirement. And you'll become more efficient at producing gear, and thus become more profitable, and they underscore that this is the design that's subject to change. And, this is coming to the point of the questioning in this episode of Dev Diaries where they ask, is this the right way to address the issue? And, it wouldn't be overly complex, and it's, just purely a time sink. So that's the question that we need to be discussing going forward. But before we do that, actually, no, that's actually a good time to discuss that. So I'm assuming you're sticking with the RNG side of things.
I'm sticking with RNG, but I think that along with, chances of failure, it should also require some sort of amount of resource from a previous created item that would help remove some of that extra bulk. And I know that in some books that I've read about games, where people would take previous items that they had and merge it into their other one and get some sort of ability because they did that. It would make it a little bit more unique, and give people a reason to want to do each portion of the skill and ramp up to something pretty crazy towards the top.
So if that
makes sense.
I think it does, but I think it could also be put into either RNG or a time sink. So
I think it's RNG with a little bit of time sink.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not for the RNG side of things, because when you apply RNG to something and you want to get something done, in a specific manner, you don't want to be pulling your hair out for days on end trying to get to that point. I've had experience with that in other games, and I don't think RS should go the way of RNG.
Well, when I think of RNG, I think of like a percentage of failure that can be shrunken down with the amount that you're able to put back into it.
All right.
So if you wanted a less chance of something fail, just give it more of a resource. In this case, a resource that is maybe
so it
like
kind of be modeled off of the invention perks then.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that the time sink idea, and specifically the mastery associated with it, personally, is a good way to go. And the reason for that is because I put it in the sense of farming, in that if this was a farming mastery and there were people who had just got 99 farming versus me who has level 120, I think it's good to give those benefits to people who truly invest in the skill. And I can see why they call this a time sink, because you're effectively putting more time into leveling the skill. And it just feels more special that way. So that's why I am actually for the mastery option. And the reason I'm not for the RNG option is because, I mean, you said you could increase it by throwing more items at it, right?
Yeah.
Could you increase it to 100% chance?
I don't think it should ever be at 100% chance.
All right. And, the classic example of why I'm saying no to the RNG option is because Star Trek Online has a crafting system where you can craft your own weapons. And there's a specific set of modifiers that you want to get. And after crunching the numbers, you basically got what turns out to be a 1 in 41 chance, i.e. around 2%, of getting the correct modifiers that you want. So that means out of 100 crafts, you're going to get roughly 2 good ones. You have a chance of getting 2 good ones. And when you pare this down at 5 crafts per every 5 minutes, that takes a lot of time. So that's what's driven me away from RNG, and why I don't think that it should be anywhere near as bad as 2% in RS. So,
well, when I'm thinking RNG, I'm thinking like you're adding a certain resource to, let's say, like the furnace to smelt something, and depending on the amount that you put in there, it increases the chances and maybe increases the quality of the item you receive in return. And I think that would just go with time, because you're either going to be collecting more of that, or you're going to just be doing it for a lot longer. And even if you mesh the two, if the chance isn't at 100%, you're still going to have a little bit more time invested into it that way. And I think it'd feel pretty rewarding in that aspect.
All right, fair enough. We can go with that then. And I mean, as long as it's not 2%, what would you say? You said it shouldn't be 100%. What would be the bottom floor, assuming you're fully invested?
Fully invested, 80.
All right, fair enough. That, I think, would be a good case of going with RNG. But like I said, there's also other reasons to go with Mastery as well. So here's 2 options for Jagex to consider. Then following from that, there was some discussion about what's going to be done about the parity of mining and smithing relating to other skills, namely Slayer and Bossing. So they said their intention with this is not to bring Slayer down, but bring mining and smithing up to the level of Slayer, and then have PVM bossing from the higher end bosses above Slayer and mining and smithing still. So this is indeed how they want to equalize the amount of GP that can be earned from these encounters. So I think that is a very hopeful thing going forward, because we did hear about that at RuneFest this year. So that's good. I'm happy with that. Then the 2 questions they leave us with for the end of this week's episode of Dev Diaries is, should mining and smithing be profitable while leveling up? And Jagex is, quote, mildly in favor of making money while leveling. And the other option is have a bit more expensive leveling, but at the end you would receive a reward that is much more lucrative. So that's another question to consider. What would you go with?
I think that they should, from me watching the video, it sounded like they wanted to have both be an option or a playstyle option for mining and smithing. And I think that's the correct way, because in like Herblore, you're able to
sell your potions as you go.
Yeah, you're able to take the cheap route, which is just selling your stuff, or you're able to do the more rewarding one and have overloads for like life. I think mining and smithing should just embody that and do the same thing.
All right, so you want somewhere in the middle then. Okay, fair enough. And I think that I wouldn't say it needs to be more expensive in terms of GP. I think it could be more expensive in time spent skilling with it. For the longest time I've stated that I am a fan of the way skills worked in RS Classic, where they were much slower, how rune crafting worked for the first 5, 6, 7 years it was in existence before ZMI and RuneSpan. So I mean, if it could be an extra cost through spending more time on it to get that extra lucrative item in the end, I would be all for that. And then the second question is, do we like the idea of mastery at the top tiers of smithing? So, basically, do you want people who invest more into the skill to have better benefits than if you just get 99 and you're not going to have those benefits. So
I think, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I am 100% for mastery as well. Yeah. So
as long as mastery doesn't mean 120.
It will not mean 120. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I just need to make sure.
Yeah. And I mean, they did make that clear in the video too. So if you haven't watched the video, definitely give it a watch about that.
I must have missed them not mentioning mentioning not being 120 there.
Yeah. And also, which model of profit do you prefer? We talked about that, leveling up as you go, making a bit along the way, or lucrative at the end already. So there we go. And the next up will be core mechanics of mining and smithing. So that should be interesting to see. And
that's the one I've been waiting for the most, honestly.
Oh, all right. Fair enough then. Well, this certainly has proved to be interesting so far, and I think we can head on over to our player side of the podcast and talk about some questions. That sound good to you?
Let's bring on the questions.
All right, so the first ones are from Thieves. A few questions for you guys this week. With the talk of skill reworks like mining and smithing, people are calling for a change to the agility skill too. Any suggestions on how you would fix it? Number 2, if you had to create your own Elder artifact, what would it be and what would it do? And finally, Star Trek uniforms become available in the Solomons General Store. Do you buy yourself a set and equip it forever, or do you take it to the forums and argue that, quote, Jamflex is killing the game? Those are from Thieves. All right. I think agility needs a rework from the ground up. And I mean that literally and figuratively here, because as it stands right now, if you have, I think, anywhere between 70 and 85 agility, you practically never run out of run energy unless your inventory is filled with sandstone. So I think the position of agility in-game definitely needs to be looked at. And we talked about this a bit back in July on the SOS State of Skills podcast, which I would recommend everyone go have a listen to if you have not, because we did have some ideas in there for agility. And agility was in the odd category where, as much as we could try and come up with updates for it, it really doesn't fit into the current game. So
I think agility would have its best time to shine if the tick system was updated.
How so?
The higher agility level you have, maybe the less ticks it takes to, let's say, attack.
No, that might be interesting. Though.
Minimal, but still there.
Yeah.
I think all of agility stuff should just be kind of, just the extra mile.
All right. Because, you could definitely run into some conflicts with that engine side, just thinking. So, I honestly have no idea what we could do for agility, and that's why when I was doing that podcast, it actually ended up with an orange orb next to it because no one knew what to do with it. So, as much as I would love to have an idea here, I currently don't. The only thing that I think you could do is, like you said here, maybe take a page from the clicker game, Idle Adventures, and tie that in with combat in some way. That might be interesting. And I think Thieves might want it to tie in with thieving a bit more, perhaps. That's just my assumption right there.
Being more agile when thieving. I think that agility could apply to a lot more than it does right now.
Exactly. And that's why it needs such a huge rethink.
But that's why I also think that the amount it should mean to other skills shouldn't be extreme. I think it should just be something small because it will apply to just about everything.
Yeah, indeed. And when you look at it, it could apply to so many different skills, and I think that's why it's so hard to get a general sense of how it would be reworked. So, anyways, hopefully that was enough. Like I said, I have no idea how agility would be reworked. Okie dokie. Number 2, if you guys could create your own Elder artifact, what would it be? And of course, Elder artifacts are things like the Stone of Jazz and so on and so forth. So do you have any ideas on this? I realize this is probably a hard point for you because you're not involved that much in the lore side of things.
Well, I don't know. If I could just come up with an item, I don't know, maybe some sort of like mask or something that would give greater knowledge or something. I don't know. That might be cool.
All right. Well, the Stone of Jazz already stores knowledge, so there's that.
Yeah. See, shows what I know. Sorry, thieves.
I think that, I mean, it's kind of hard to put these into corporeal senses because you got to realize that when these were created, they weren't necessarily corporeal-based things. So they're on the level of Zaros and Saren. I think that there might be an interesting thing that would look further into the abyss, maybe a way of controlling the abyss, not just teleporting through it, and using that as a way of moving around RuneScape and manipulating matter in an interesting way.
Manipulating matter, the most overpowered thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't need magic or swords to kill someone in Bounty Hunter, you just manipulate the matter around them to make their lungs toxic so they can't breathe the air. And then they asphyxiate themselves.
Ooh.
So there's a way you could use it for nefarious purposes. Don't ask me how I came up with that. I don't know. I just came up with it in my mind.
You're sadistic.
Well, yeah, we kind of are. I don't know if you were you on the episode where we
Don't say we. Don't throw me into this.
Just wait. Were you on the episode where we first uncovered the issues with the Note 7?
Yeah. Why did you bring up the Note 7? You can't just sneak that in every single time.
Well, you said sadistic in the way I started laughing about what they were doing. So.
Okay.
Anyways, so there's mine. But who knows what we might see next week in The Children of Mon. It's a timely question from Thieves. So. All right. Yeah, I don't believe there's anything that can manipulate matter and move through the abyss, and not time traveling, but, just control matter. Star Trek uniforms. Yes, I think that would be a good reward to add to the store after the sequel to the quest Enlightened Journey, which, if you guys have not done that quest, I'd recommend everyone do the quest entitled Enlightened Journey, because that is, in effect, the Captain Picard quest, because it's an explorer who opens up the balloon network, and you get to be his number one. And he looks an awful lot like Patrick Stewart. So, I think that would be a great reward in the general store following the sequel to that quest.
Of course you would.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we are going to be having some more bottle quests presumably in 2017, so I think that that would be a good way to go. What about you? Would you do that?
No.
No? Oh, too bad.
No. Just have a force your character to wear a Jar Jar Binks outfit.
Yeah. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Like those Star Wars characters,
but
just
only
they look
you,
primitive, don't they?
You. Only you.
All right. Thank you, Thieves. I enjoyed those questions.
Thank you.
You want to take the next one?
Yeah, this is from 1234, and we're cool. When skilling outfits no longer be obtainable only through zealous microtransactions. Wow.
Well, we saw the first update for that this week. It hasn't been outright stated anywhere, but the general guideline that was talked about moving through these various updates is that about every 4 months they would release these into game, a different outfit piece, starting with the oldest ones, presumably. So We do have that to look forward to, and that effectively puts us around February or March of next year to see another set of outfits be released. And
Shark set.
I think that's the one that everyone wants, the shark set. I know there was some good conversations about that. So shark set is definitely up there. One I would personally prefer to see would be the Elven camouflage set, though probably won't for a while because that one's relatively new, only came out this year. So that's the one I'm hoping for.
Oh, we might see that one sooner than later.
Why do you say that?
Because of Menaphos.
Oh, okay. Though, if I had to place my own bet, I think the two that we'll see next will be the Shark outfit and the Diviner's set as well. Mainly because, the Shark set was one of the first, and let's be real here, divination itself, is a good moneymaker, but it's nowhere near, the outfits don't seem anywhere near overpowered as the Shark set did. So I think that's where they're going next with these. But yeah, every 4 months. So based on that, we should see around 3 a year, presumably. So, and it's not unprecedented to have something that was initially hidden behind a microtransaction to make its way into the game. And, Jagex is on a good path here. So I'm happy with this. All right. The next one is from Kiratan. Even though it hasn't been released yet, but do you think the Nightmare Gloves will have a huge role in PvP? All right, spoilers for next week's quest. Nightmare Gloves are apparently released from the Children of Ma quest, which I found out about. That's all we'll say on that quest and other rewards. But tell us about Nightmare Gloves and what do you think of them for PvP?
These are going to be from a Slayer monster. And they allow you to move and use snipe at the same time. I'm not sure if they said the level on it right away, but I don't know if snipe was really that amazing of an ability to begin with. It kind of just takes a little bit of a long time to do.
Yeah, it takes a while to charge up, and then I use it as a basic in PvE, but I can see why you wouldn't want to use that in PvP because it takes so long.
It's tier 85, but as of right now, because no stats have come in on it, besides the fact that it allows you to do snipe, which they mentioned in a video.
1.8 second hold time for snipe as of right now. And it gives you between 125 and 219% damage.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to see when that information starts to fill in after the quest is released. But as of from what we know right now, I would say no.
All right. I don't think snipe should be able to be used while you're moving about, and if I had to make one suggestion for these gloves, is it that it would slow your rate of movement down rather than just allowing you to move at normal speed while using snipe, because I don't know, that doesn't really make sense to me. So we'll have to see how they go. But so you don't think they'll have a huge role?
Like I said, as of right now, no. But I do not know the stats on it, and that could change everything. It is a level 85 glove, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's pretty high. All right, thank you for that question, Kira. The next one is from Tycho Elf Clan Quest. These last three were how much do you think players shall be able to affect the development of RuneScape? Mining and smithing rework, for example. Full control, keeping it secret, or somewhere in between. This is a classic question. And, it's always worth discussing because we've seen the various ends of it. In the early days, we heard nothing. In the last few years, we've heard practically everything. In some years, we even decided what was going into game with polls and Rune Labs. So it's a huge, huge spectrum. So where do you sit? I don't think I've ever asked you this question.
That's surprising to me because I feel like this gets brought up a lot. but I think that it should be more on the side of keeping it secret. I'm not saying that them coming out and telling us about things, maybe asking for our feedback every once in a while, is a bad thing. It is good, but I do long for the days of being surprised about an update that comes out. And I believe I mentioned that in my last article I wrote.
Yeah, I think there's even a discussion topic on the RSBANDB forums about this, started by someone. Might have been you, I'm not sure. But, the classic example in this case is the construction update that was released by saying that we're going to be adding clockwork cats and chairs that you'll be able to sit on to the game. And that, of course, was the construction update. Other examples that I can think of, the Desert Treasure Quest, basically one paragraph, like 3 sentences describing Desert Treasure, which ultimately became one of the most iconic quests in RuneScape, changing the way Magic is looked at from a combat perspective. So I am on the realm that, while it shouldn't be completely locked up tight secret, it should go back to kind of that same kind of thing where we get a monthly behind-the-scenes article that is kind of vague in discussing what's coming out, so that there's still a few surprises in it, but by all means highlight, a few of the headlining updates, but do keep us a few surprises, like the hidden release of the construction skill, for example. So that's what I'd like to see going forward, a mixed bag, so to speak. And, I can totally see why they like talking so much about the updates that are coming out from, looking at rewards for next week's quest, for example, which I haven't looked at because I want to wait until the quest comes out to see how they're going to intertwine before hearing about them. So that's why I was unaware of the Nightmare Gloves. But it gives them a chance to talk with the community and, get a general sense of, are we going in the right direction? Should we be doing this? Should we not be doing this? And I think that after the wake-up call that was the evolution of combat, they definitely want to have a much more open discourse with the player base. So that's why we hear so much about it and why we see weekly streams about it. Personally, though, I feel that that's a little too much, but Jagex likes controlling their message, and that's a good way for them to do that. And, in some regards, modern marketing says that if you can be upfront with your customer base like this, you're more likely to have better results and more sales at the end of the day. So that's why they're doing it. And, I think this is going to be fixed in 2017 because they did say there's going to be some surprises that we're not going to be aware of. So,
yeah. I think that with their keynote at RuneFest each year, where they kind of give a roadmap of what they plan to do, it would be much more effective if they just dropped trailers to things like they did with Menaphos.
Yeah, because they're so rough around the edges, right? And, I can see producing a trailer if it makes sense for various aspects. Like NXT definitely needed a trailer in the 2 RuneFests it was talked about, because that's the largest graphical update to RS ever, moving away from Java and using your video card's native hardware, right? So it's okay to do it for those kind of things. But, all right, we seem to be on the same page here in general then. So
yeah, and who knows? Maybe things will change because of their new plan for an update cycle. So
yeah, that's another thing that's going to be very interesting in 2017. They could, say that expansion number 2 in 2017. We're not going to tell you what it is. It's going to be a huge surprise. There's just going to be this little news post saying it's here. You got to find it in game. That might be interesting. So who knows? Alrighty, thank you for the questions, everyone. If you guys want to send your own questions in, you can do that by calling us at 571-57BNB, which is 571-572-2632. We take text questions and voice questions there. You can also email questions at rsbnb.com or leave us a direct message on Twitter at RSBNB. All right, you ready for some tech news?
Bring on the tech news.
All right. So, interesting that we end up talking right here about Twitter, because that is in our tech news this week. But there's also an interesting story here from Skype, believe it or not.
What's Skype?
Exactly, right? It's what we're using to do this podcast right now. Mm-hmm. And, there has been a general move away from Skype in some audiences, gaming, professional too, I think. And
definitely professional.
Yeah, Skype's got to be feeling this, because what they did this week is made it so that you no longer need a Skype account to have a chat with someone. You can just go to the Skype web app at skype.com and log in as a guest, type in your name, and you are free to have a chat with anyone else who has that chat room link. You can, have group chats, text chats, voice chats, video chats. You can have up to 300 people in one chat and up to 25 people at a time on a voice or video call, all for free. And when you sign as a guest, your conversation will last for 24 hours. And if you want to keep it, you just sign in with your Skype account. You also have the option of using Skype's real-time translation service, so good if you're working across borders, I guess. And I think this is a shot across the bow at Discord, and the folks at Discord should be really happy to see that Skype is going in this direction, because, Discord, especially for the gaming sense, has changed the way a lot of people chat online with their friends, especially for gaming. So I'm going to be interested to see what comes from this, because Skype has been around for a long time and it's owned by Microsoft, so of course it's going to be all right. So, but this brings it to practically everyone.
Yeah. If I knew a little bit more about their implementation, I would be able to have a little bit more of an opinion. But right now, it doesn't sound like it's all that crazy.
No, it's all standard modern day web stuff, right? So
yeah.
But I think the core aspect of this is really a signal in the way that the current technology stream is going in the world, and that is that you no longer need a desktop to be able to get stuff done. And the fact you can have calls in a web browser really highlights where we're at with things. And that's my takeaway from this, is that we're moving well beyond, the desktop, traditional apps and whatnot, to the point where web apps can practically do everything that a desktop app can. So that's my takeaway from this, and Microsoft is really jumping on board with this for Skype. All right. You ready to talk about Twitter?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. And I can see why you're reluctant with that. And, Twitter was really unique when it came out, and so much has changed online, and specifically with Twitter.
But it's just another social media thing, so it can only, unless it grew bigger than a failing possibility,
Yeah. And, that's a very good point you bring that up, because it's like, where can Twitter grow from here? I think they're stagnant, if anything. So this is what they view as their core problem with their platform, and why they're stagnant and why their share prices are down. And that is that there's too much abuse and bullying and harassment happening on the internet and on Twitter specifically. So with that, this week they have brought out a number of new tools in order to help counteract that. And the first one is an expanded mute feature. You can now expand mute to notifications, so that if you mute a certain user, you will no longer get notifications from that user if they're trying to follow you, or like everything you do as a way of harassing you, or constantly messaging you. If you mute them, you won't hear anything from them at all. They're also enabling you to mute keywords, phrases, and entire conversations you don't want to see notifications about. This is rolling out on all their platforms, so there's that. And they also have a new policy that is going to be focused on targeting people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or disease. And today they're also giving people a more direct way to report this type of conduct for yourself or others whenever you see it happening. And they say, and I quote, "This will improve our ability to process these reports, which helps reduce the burden on the person experiencing abuse and helps to strengthen a culture of collective support on Twitter." So they're also going to be doing this with enforcement, and they have retrained all their support teams on policies, including special sessions on cultural and historical contextualization of hateful content, and implemented an ongoing refresher program. We've also improved our internal tools and systems in order to deal more effectively with this content when reported to us. All right, now the million-dollar question: is this going to save Twitter?
No.
All right, why not? And in your opinion, what's wrong with the platform?
It's not going to save Twitter because it doesn't adjust, or it doesn't talk about the problem Twitter's having at all.
And what problem is that?
This is something completely different. This is just like fixing up like stuff that should have just been like normal updates. Like, yep. This is not their new like innovative thing. Like, Twitter now has video vines or whatever the whoops. Yeah, it just isn't going in the right direction.
All right. And I mean, when you really look at this, this mute feature, it's a simple thing to implement on the notification feed. And why wasn't it done ages ago if this was indeed the problem, right? I have been a part of and am really pleased with a new upcoming social network that I've used as a pick of the week before on the show called Gab. It focuses on a core motto of free speech. And their first feature to deal with this kind of thing was this exact same mute feature. So, I mean, I think that Twitter's perhaps getting a bit worried that, if we need to put this kind of feature in, then perhaps that might help some people. But like you said, it's not a core aspect of what's going to save Twitter, because
no.
I mean, at this point, it is effectively an advertising platform based on how many followers you have. You can send out a short message and get it out to people. That's all this platform is at this point. There's no intrinsic value to tweeting unless you're driving traffic, which anyone who just drives traffic doesn't make money, and that's what we can see with Twitter.
Yeah, it's the people over at Twitter are approaching this like Nintendo is approaching console market.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's just the wrong idea.
And I mean, in the process of doing this, they're sending some pretty terrifying messages from the free speech kind of thing. I won't go talking into the the huge bannings that happened this week on Twitter. That happened, and you can read into that if you're at all interested. It's very interesting that they don't mention this, of course, in the posting here. But there was a huge swath of people banned from Twitter this week, and it in some ways feels very Orwellian, especially that final paragraph I read about enforcement and, having special sessions on, quote, cultural and historical contextualizations. I honestly think that if someone is raised properly and they have a good head on their head, they are able to tell what is culturally insensitive and what is historically hateful content. I don't think training sessions are needed for those. And, I think that this proves, like what you said, Twitter's focusing on the wrong side of things. And at this point, I think the only things that can save them are, a renewed focus on perhaps free speech and looking towards Facebook to becoming more of like a publishing platform, because I don't think 140 characters cuts it today.
Yeah, I think Twitter's got one more chance after this, and if they don't, I think they'll be in a hole too deep to dig themselves or get themselves out of.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, there's other options out there. Gab is doing quite well. And I think that, just the huge mass of Twitter prevented anything else from developing to become a competitor until it was too late, because we're already at that point. So, anyways, moving on. Final piece of tech news relates to Spotify. Do you use Spotify?
Yes, I do.
All right. Well, for the past 5 months and possibly longer, the Spotify app on your computers has been assaulting user storage devices and, quote, potentially writing enough data to take years off their expected lifespans. Reports of tens, or in some cases hundreds of gigabytes being written in an hour aren't uncommon, and occasionally the recorded amounts are measured in terabytes. The overload happens when Spotify is idle and isn't storing any songs locally. And just a word of warning out there for anyone who uses a solid-state drive. Solid-state drives have limited read and write cycles, and the more you read and write to them, the faster they wear out, to a point of some point in the future they will just stop working. So it's really irresponsible of the Spotify app in order to be doing this.
Yeah, it sounds like someone just let an infinite loop go.
Yeah, or, something else that was, trying to do some kind of caching but failed horribly. And then Spotify responded to this saying they fixed it in version 1.0.42, and they say, we've seen some questions in our community around the amount of data written using the Spotify client on desktop. They have been reviewed, and any potential concerns have been now addressed. It's worth noting that this update is still not available for the Mac or Windows machines the reporter used who wrote this, and Spotify officials said version 1.042 will be available within the next few days. All right, so... and, I mean, most people won't even notice this because most people don't look at their hard drive light or a resource manager seeing that this data is being written. So, this is just, more so of, not pointing out a problem, but pointing out to our listeners out there and users of Spotify that something like this can happen and you don't even know it's happening. And because our computers are so powerful these days, the app can get away with it. And, this kind of goes back to the good old days where before we had, fancy high-level languages and basically languages that enabled programmers to write code easier, the people who would write code to write these applications would have actually had to take care of everything they were doing to ensure that they were writing an app that wouldn't necessarily harm the computer. But that worry is gone now with modern programming languages and the fact we have so many resources at hand, and that's how we end up in this situation.
Yeah.
So,
and it almost makes you wonder, like, how many other places might be doing this that we just don't know of.
And, I mean, this is the number one reason why, when we were developing things for RSBANDB, things took so long, is because we didn't want to use frameworks that were taking up unnecessary data. Because, well, when you write something and you write it yourself, you know exactly what it's doing. And in most cases, you can do that still. You just got to be really, really careful. So... someone in the comments here says that they just checked the task manager and Spotify has written over 1 terabyte in the past 15 days, and they played only 5 songs on the computer in that time. So, yeah, something definitely gone pretty bad there, but definitely run your Spotify updates if you do use Spotify. All right, ready for a skill of the month update check?
I am.
Okay, so our agility skill of the month. Parnassius is in first place with 3.8 million XP gained, Small Fib in second with 2.3, and Carpi still in second with 231,000 XP gained. And meanwhile, you're still in fourth.
Yeah, I think I probably gained maybe like 5K.
You've gained 97K XP so far.
Well, I mean like 5K
Oh, okay, fair enough.
From last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been bounty hunting and fishing. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. So, should be interesting to see how this two-way race that's almost non-existent turns out. But come on, I'm rooting for someone to at least make it interesting in the end. But we'll just wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what month is it?
It's November.
Yeah, you know what next month is? It's December. And that means that, well, it's clip show time. It's time to wrap up 2016 of RSBANDB Update. And, you know, the clip show is one of our favorite shows that we always record at the end of the year. So we would like your clip suggestions for 2016, and you can do that by heading over to update.rsbb.com/clips, and you can fill out the form that's there. It's a Google form. We don't ask for any personal information. All we ask for is an episode number and a specific time index. If you can describe the clip and tell us what it's about or why it's worthy, that's great. If you also want to include your forum name, RuneScape name, or Twitter handle, we can use that as well, give you credit for it, or if you just want a shout out. And finally, a question I've added to the forum this year: who should host the 2016 clip show? Normally we only have one co-host for the entire year. This year we've had 4 so far. So the question is, should this year's clip show host be someone from one of the quarters this year? Should it be Mr. Bistro? Should it be Colton? Should it be Dave? Or should it be Sirion? Or should it be someone else entirely? So there's a field here where you can put in someone's name, give suggestions on who you think should host the clip show, and we'll take it from there. But with just over a month to go, I figured it was time to get on promoting this forum once again and seeing what you guys thought of 2016 and gathering some clips for the year. I'm honestly not sure what to do for the host this year. Your opinion as the host for this quarter, what do you think we should do?
Well, I can see that having all 4 co-hosts might be a little busy. But I think that maybe the top 2 picks could probably just be on the clip show. I think that'd be pretty fun.
All right. Well, there's reason for you guys to come and fill out this form then. Update.rsbnb.com/clips. Tell us who should be the clip show host and provide a clip. Look forward to seeing what you guys have to offer. All right. Pick of the week time. You went last week. I'm going to go this week if that's all right with you.
That is okay with me.
All right. So I don't normally promote this website, but, you know, it is out there that there are good portions of this website that people can go to learn things or maybe have some good laughs or find some honest news in cases. But this week's pick of the week is actually going to be a subreddit, and that is the Daystrom Institute subreddit, which is a subreddit designed to focus on the discussion of things Star Trek related. So if anyone out there ever wants to have a discussion about canonical things in the Star Trek universe, this is the place to go. They have a whole post of the week system that people can talk about. There's lots of interesting things on here. Like, for example, if you've always wondered why was Voyager carrying tricobalt torpedoes when it entered the Delta Quadrant, that's one of the discussions that was posted today.
Good Lord.
Yeah, see, they get really specific like that. I saw one once on specifically how the warp core works. So if you're at all interested in this kind of thing, it's a good place to go. And in general, the people here are very serious about it. And it doesn't really suffer from many of the other free speech problems and bias problems that the rest of Reddit does, which is excellent because it's a very narrow community. So most of the people there are there for, you know, a specific reason, and that's what makes it great. So that is the Daystrom Institute subreddit. Link will be in the show notes at update.rsbnb.com. You ever see this one?
No, I haven't.
No. I think you could spend some time here and you might find an appreciation for it.
Maybe.
And, you can start with, the easy ones and then go into the wiki if you're at all interested in seeing what's there. Like if you go to the top discussions for the past year, for example, we had discussions on Anton Yelchin, Star Trek Nemesis, the ending of it, which still remains controversial. So lots of interesting things on here. r/Daystrom Institute. All right. So, what have you been up to this week aside from Bounty Hunter, which I know we spent a great deal of time on?
Well, I got 97 Invention, and
Oh, excellent.
I am a good portion of the way to 98, so I should have 98 probably this weekend. And if everything goes well, over Thanksgiving weekend, I will be getting my Maxcape back.
Oh, nice.
So,
are you going to continue past 99?
I might take a little bit of a break and do other things that I enjoy game. But I will definitely go past, maybe try a little bit of combat out, but I might round off 120 fishing when I get some bonus experience stuff that comes around with the inevitable holiday stuff.
Right.
So.
That does go very nicely with Invention. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sounds good.
How about you?
Well, I mean, as for me on RS, I just checked out the Bounty Hunter stuff. Did a bit of nature rune crafting. Unfortunately, as I pointed out last week, the nature runes did ultimately fall down from their top price of like 440 over the, just the past 2 weeks. We're down to now 376, but that's still a decent price for that. But aside from that, just some herb farming and divination energy gathering, because I am still trying to recover those losses from when I erroneously purchased that legendary pet using bonds. So, yeah, that's mainly what I've been up to now that I got the mining and stuff done. But, yeah, definitely looking forward to the mining and smithing update next year. That is the sole thing right now preventing me from going back to the Ark. Because if I go back to the Ark, I need to mine gold and salt, and I will inevitably, at some point, get level 99 mining with that. And I'd much rather wait to get level 99 mining until the mining and smithing rework comes out next year. So, kind of a bit of a disappointment there. But, anyways. I think that about does us in for this episode. I don't think there's anything else that I've missed, unless you want to... mention anything?
No, I think we've covered it all.
All right. Well, then, we will be back next week. I assume our schedule will be the same, but it might fluctuate a little bit because of American Thanksgiving next week. But Children of Ma next week should be very interesting. So, with that being said, see you next week, and thank you for sharing your time with us.
Bye.